You wake up one morning and something feels off. Your groceries cost twice what they did last year. Your paycheck doesn't stretch as far as it used to. Everyone says it's temporary, but deep down you know something is breaking. Now imagine this same feeling spreading across an entire empire. Because every civilization that once ruled the world, Rome, Spain, Britain, all reached this exact moment. A moment when prosperity turns to arrogance, when confidence turns to denial, and when money, the thing that built it all, quietly begins to die. Rome had its silver denarius. Spain had its mountain of New World silver. Britain had the almighty pound. And every one of them believed the same lie. We're different. It can't happen to us. But history is merciless. It doesn't repeat, it evolves. And now in 2025, the United States, the empire of credit cards, trillion-dollar deficits, and global dominance, is standing at the same edge. The numbers are different, the screens are digital, but the pattern is identical. Overextension, overspending, money printing, inflation, collapse. We've seen this movie before, we just never recognized the opening scene. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, do you think we're living through the beginning or the end of an empire? Because what comes next isn't just history, it's the story we're living right now. Rome, the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen. Its armies marched across continents. Its laws shaped civilizations. Its roads still survive 2,000 years later. And at the heart of it all, the coin that made it possible, the denarius. Introduced in 211 BC, each denarius contained about 4.5 grams of pure silver, real value, stamped with the emperor's face. To hold the denarius was to hold the promise of Rome itself, stability, strength, trust. Merchants in Egypt, soldiers in Gaul, traders in Britannia, they all accepted it because they knew exactly what it was worth. But empires, like people, grow addicted to their own success. Every victory demanded more soldiers, more roads, more food, more gold to keep the machine running. And slowly, quietly, Rome began to spend more than it earned. When that happens, every empire faces the same choice. Raise taxes, cut spending, or cheat. Rome chose the third option. Around 64 AD, Emperor Nero ordered the means to reduce the silver in the denarius from 100% pure to 90%. 10% may not sound like much, but it was a silent revolution. The state could now mint 11 coins with the silver that once made 10. More money, same resources. A miracle, right? Except it wasn't. It was inflation, the slow poison of empires. Decade after decade, emperor after emperor, the purity kept falling. Under Caracalla, it was 50%. Under Gallienus, barely 5%. The one solid silver coin had become a shell, a base metal coated with a whisper of silver, a lie you could hold in your hand. Imagine being a Roman soldier in the year 265 AD. You risked your life on the frontier, fighting barbarians for the glory of Rome. You're paid in denarii, coins that look identical to those your grandfather earned, but they buy almost nothing. Bread costs 10 times more. Your family can't afford oil, meat, or wine. And when you complain, the governor tells you, the coins are the same, the value hasn't changed. You know it has. By 300 AD, the cost of living had exploded 50-fold. Farmers stopped selling for coins. They demanded grain, or livestock, or gold. Tax collectors couldn't collect taxes. Armies began mutinying, refusing to fight unless paid in real metal. The economy, the invisible glue holding Rome together, simply stopped working. And yet, on paper, nothing seemed wrong. The coin still bore the emperor's face. The markets were still open. The people still believed, or at least pretended to. But belief isn't infinite, and when trust dies, currency dies. Rome's leaders kept doubling down, minting, spending, borrowing, promising that things would stabilize. They always do, until they don't. By 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire officially collapsed. Its borders didn't fall overnight. Its armies didn't vanish in a single battle. They simply went unpaid. The soldiers walked away. The bureaucrats stopped showing up. The empire that once built aqueducts and conquered continents couldn't afford to fix its own roads. Rome didn't die by sword or flame. It died by accounting, by a lie printed onto metal. And yet, the most terrifying part of this story isn't that it happened. It's that everyone in power thought they could manage it. They believed they could print prosperity, that faith alone could hold an empire together. They were wrong, because centuries later, another empire, one that controlled more silver and gold than anyone before or since, would make the same fatal mistake. Not by debasing its coins, but by flooding the world with them. Next, the empire that drowned in its own wealth, Spain. The year is 1545. High in the Bolivian Andes, Spanish explorers uncover a mountain that will rewrite global economics. Cerro Rico, the rich hill. What they found wasn't just a mine, it was a mountain made of money. Over the next century, Potosí would become the beating heart of the Spanish Empire, a city of 200,000 people, bigger than London or Paris at the time. Every year, thousands of tons of silver were hauled out of that mountain, loaded onto galleons, and shipped across the Atlantic. From Seville to Antwerp, the world glittered with Spanish silver. Spain was rich, unimaginably rich. By 1600, nearly half of all the silver ever mined on Earth came from Spanish America. The Spanish dollar, the Real de a Ocho, became the first truly global currency, accepted from Europe to Asia, stamped with the royal crest of Castile. If Rome's denarius built an empire on trust, Spain's silver built an empire on abundance. But abundance can be a curse. At first, the flood of silver made Spain unstoppable. Armies were paid, cathedrals rose, artists thrived. The empire stretched from Manila to Mexico. The sun never set on Spanish possessions. But the problem with easy money is that it never feels like a problem until it's too late. As silver poured in, prices across Europe exploded. Grain that once cost 1 coin now cost 10. A suit of armor that cost 20 ducats rose to 200. The price revolution of the 16th century was born, an early global inflationary shock. The more silver Spain mined, the less it was worth. The government kept spending, convinced that wealth was infinite. But Spain wasn't building factories or industries. It wasn't inventing new technologies. It was simply extracting and consuming. The empire's wealth was literal, metal, not productivity. And that distinction destroyed it. Ships full of silver left the New World, and most of it never stayed in Spain. It went straight to France, the Netherlands and England, to pay for weapons, silk, and luxury goods that Spain didn't produce. Silver in, silver out. The empire became a funnel, not a factory. By the 1550s, Spain was drowning in obligations. King Philip II inherited debts of 36 million ducats from his father, Charles V, and immediately borrowed more. Wars in Italy, the Netherlands, and against the Ottoman Empire drained the treasury faster than silver could fill it. When the math stopped working, Philip did what every empire does when the numbers don't add up. He defaulted. 1557. Spain suspends all debt payments. The first sovereign default in modern history. 1560, 1575, 1596. Three more follow within 40 years. Each one shocks Europe. Each one erodes trust. Lenders demand higher interest. Merchants refuse Spanish currency. The empire that owned half the world's silver couldn't find anyone willing to take its money. Desperate, the government mints bellon, copper coins meant to circulate as if they were silver. It's monetary theater, and everyone knows it. Inflation soars again. Markets collapse. Spain's once mighty credit evaporates. By the 1600s, the Spanish economy is hollowed out. Gold and silver still flow, but the real economy, agriculture, manufacturing, innovation, has decayed. The country that once dominated the oceans now imports its ships from abroad. The silver that was supposed to make Spain invincible had instead made it dependent, addicted to wealth it didn't create. When the 30 Years' War ended in 1648, Spain signed the Peace of Westphalia, not as the triumphant ruler of Europe, but as a fading power. The treasury was empty, its fleets were wrecked, its soldiers unpaid. The mountain that had built an empire now stood as a monument to exhaustion. By 1700, the Spanish Empire was a shadow. Its colonies slipped away, its debts lingered for generations, and its currency was no longer trusted even at home. The pattern had repeated perfectly. Wealth without productivity, spending without limits, inflation without end, and when the confidence died, so did the empire. But Spain's fall taught the world a dangerous lesson, one that another empire would soon exploit. What if, instead of silver or gold, a nation's power came from paper itself, from credit, from bonds, from promises, from money that could be created with ink? Next, the empire that mastered paper money and lost the world anyway, Britain. For 2 centuries, Britain ruled not through silver or gold, but through credit. While Rome built roads and Spain mined silver, Britain built contracts. From London's docks to India's railways, every deal, every ship, every colony ran on one thing: trust in the pound. At its height in 1922, the British Empire governed nearly a quarter of humanity, 458 million people across 1/4 of the Earth's landmass. The sun never sets on the British Empire, they said, not because of its glory, but because its reach was endless. And the glue holding it all together wasn't armies or even trade. It was the pound sterling, the most trusted currency in the world. For over 200 years, the pound was anchored to gold. 1 pound equaled 113 grains of pure metal. It wasn't just money, it was a promise a measurable, tangible claim on real value. Merchants in Shanghai, bankers in New York, governments from Cairo to Cape Town, all trusted that promise. Britain had discovered something revolutionary. If people believed in your money, they'd believe in your power. But that faith came with a price, because when power grows, so does the bill. In 1914, Britain went to war, and everything changed. National debt skyrocketed from £650 million to over £7 billion in just 5 years. To finance total war, Britain suspended gold convertibility. The pound, once as good as gold, was now backed by nothing but the government's word. After the war, Britain tried to turn back the clock. In 1925, Winston Churchill, then Chancellor of the Exchequer, restored the gold standard at the old pre-war rate. But it was a disastrous move. The pound was overvalued, exports collapsed, unemployment soared, factories shut down. The strong pound had broken the working class. By 1931, the illusion shattered. Britain abandoned gold again, permanently. For the first time in modern history, the world's most trusted currency was just paper. Still, the empire limped forward. The colonies sent resources, the navy patrolled the seas, and London remained the global banker. But the second blow came faster and harder. World War II. By 1945, Britain's debt had reached 270% of GDP. The empire had won the war, but lost its solvency. Entire cities lay in ruins. Factories were rubble. The treasury was empty. And worse, Britain owed everything to the United States. At the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, a new world order was born, and with it, a new reserve currency. The US dollar replaced the pound as the world's benchmark of value. Britain's two-century reign as the center of global finance ended in a single signature. After the war, the decline accelerated. In 1947, Britain tried to make the pound convertible again, a desperate attempt to prove it still mattered. Within 6 weeks, a run on the currency forced the government to reverse course. In 1949, the pound was devalued by 30%. In 1967, by another 14%. Each cut wasn't just an economic act, it was an admission of weakness. Every devaluation told the same story. The empire was spending more than it earned, and the world knew it. The Suez Crisis was the breaking point. When Egypt nationalized the canal, Britain tried to take it back by force. But Washington refused to support them and even threatened to crush the pound if they didn't retreat. Britain folded. It was the moment the world realized the empire that once ruled the waves now followed America's orders. By the 1970s, Britain's economy was crumbling. Inflation hit 25%. The government begged the IMF for a bailout, the global lender of last resort. The pound, once a symbol of unshakable strength, had become a synonym for decline. The pattern had repeated again: war debt, currency debasement, loss of reserve status, devaluation, inflation, collapse. Rome's silver turned to dust. Spain's silver lost its value. Britain's paper lost its trust. 3 empires, 3 currencies, 3 identical mistakes. But the pattern didn't stop in 1971, because in that same year, the new empire, the United States, made the exact same choice Britain once did. It cut its tie to gold. And for the first time in history, the global reserve currency became pure paper, created by keystrokes, sustained by belief. The Roman denarius, the Spanish dollar, the British pound, and now the US dollar. 4 empires, one pattern. Next, the empire of credit, America. You are living inside an empire, not one of marble or silver or gold, but of credit. Every skyscraper, every jet, every warship, every stimulus check, all paid for with money that doesn't really exist yet. The promise of tomorrow, spent today. For the past 80 years, the US dollar has been the foundation of the global economy. It's in your wallet, your savings, your rent, your debt. It is the modern denarius, real de A8, and pound sterling, all rolled into one. But every pattern has a peak, and every empire believes it cannot smart the cycle. In 1944, the world gathered at Bretton Woods to design a new financial order. Gold would anchor the system, $35 an ounce, and the US dollar would anchor the world. Every other currency pegged itself to the dollar, and the dollar was as good as gold. But by the 1960s, something was off. The Vietnam War, the Great Society programs, military bases on every continent. The bills were mounting, and the gold wasn't. America was printing more dollars than it had gold to back them. Foreign nations noticed. France began demanding gold for its dollars. Others followed. And then, in 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. No more convertibility. The dollar was now a pure fiat currency, backed not by metal, but by trust. At first, it seemed to work. The petrodollar system made oil, the lifeblood of modern civilization, tradable only in dollars. That created artificial demand. The world had to use dollars. But time erodes all guarantees. In 1980, US national debt was under $1 trillion. By 2000, it was $5.6 trillion. By 2020, $27 trillion. Today, over $36 trillion and rising, faster than at any point in history. Each crisis, the dot-com crash, the Great Recession, the pandemic, brought the same solution: print more. The euphemism changed: quantitative easing, liquidity support, stabilization measures, but the mechanism never did. In 2020 alone, the Federal Reserve created over $4 trillion from nothing, more than in the previous 100 years combined. Officials said inflation wouldn't follow. They always do. By 2022, inflation hit 9%. Real inflation, the one you feel at the checkout line, was far higher. And like Rome, like Spain, like Britain, the government told you not to worry, that it was temporary, that modern economics had changed the rules of the game. But the rules never changed, only the tools did. Rome debased silver, Spain overmined it, Britain overborrowed it, America digitized it. Different era, same math. The US today runs $1 trillion deficits annually, even during years of growth. Military spending alone surpasses $800 billion per year, more than the next 10 countries combined. The empire stretches across 70 nations, nearly 800 military bases. defended by money printed into existence. You don't conquer the world with swords anymore. You do it with spreadsheets. But the world is changing. In 2000, over 70% of global foreign reserves were held in dollars. Today, it's under 58% and falling. Nations are trading in yuan, rupees, rubles, reals. China and Russia are stockpiling gold. The BRICS bloc is building an alternative financial system, brick by brick. The cracks are forming, not in armies, but in confidence. And confidence is all that holds a fiat empire together. If you've watched this far, you've seen this movie before. Rome's soldiers demanded payment in gold. Spain's creditors refused its bonds. Britain's colonies walked away when the pound lost its strength. When the world stops believing in the dollar, what happens next? We are living through stage 5 of the imperial cycle, inflation. Stage 6 is loss of confidence, and stage 7, collapse, has already been written in history books 4 times before. The only question is whether we'll learn or repeat. Rome thought its silver was eternal. Spain thought its silver was infinite. Britain thought its pound was indestructible. America thinks its dollar is exceptional. They were all wrong, because no empire collapses from outside, not at first. They fall from within, when the numbers stop adding up and the people stop believing. What's happening now isn't new. It's just the final chapter, written all over again. Next, what history tells us happens after the collapse. Every empire believes it's different, that its destiny is exceptional, that the rules of history were written for someone else. But the math never lies. You can't spend more than you earn forever. You can't borrow infinite wealth from the future. And you can't print trust, not with silver, not with paper, not with code. The pattern doesn't care about pride or politics or promises. It's simply gravity, the economic law that pulls every empire back to earth. Rome ignored it. Spain drowned in it. Britain delayed it. And America is living it. When currencies collapse, it isn't just money that dies. It's memory. It's the belief that tomorrow will look like yesterday, that your savings mean safety, that the system will hold. And yet, collapse is never the end. It's the reset that clears the slate. New currencies rise, new systems form. The world moves on, because it has to. Maybe the next reserve currency will be digital. Maybe it will be gold again. Maybe it will be something we haven't invented yet. But whatever it is, it will begin the same way, with trust. And eventually, it will end the same way, when that trust runs out. So the lesson isn't fear, it's awareness. Empires fall, but people endure. Systems change, but values, honesty, productivity, restraint are what rebuild them. If this story opened your eyes, don't just scroll away. Subscribe, share, and tell me what lesson you'll never forget. Because history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And the next verse is being written right now.